Beyond Survival is the official podcast of Waymaker Institute. Our desire is to equip you as a follower of Jesus to thrive. Each episode reveals how the gospel impacts the entire human experience for the advancement of God's kingdom. Ultimately, Jesus' promise of abundant life means we are meant to go beyond survival. So, let's jump in with today's episode. On today's episode, we will be hearing from Tanner Petty, the Programs Director at Waymaker Institute, as well as our hosts, Brett Clubb, Director of Waymaker Institute, and Sofia Thomas.
Okay, let's talk about Beyond Survival. Why? Well, let's just say, what does that mean for you personally? So I think this is going to be very much a personal episode starting off. And so, Tanner, like what for you when you think of the idea of survival as a follower of Jesus, how is that personally connected to you?
Yeah. Well, I think first of all, this is not a wilderness survival podcast.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
We're not Bear Grylls.
The three of us.
If it was, I would be in trouble.
Oh yeah.
I can make a fire. That's about it. I think I'd love to be a wilderness guy, but I'm not.
That.
So
absolutely not.
If there's not electricity and a working toilet, I'm
done.
in trouble.
We're all done.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think for Beyond Survival, we're coming from this angle of, I think for the vision of Christianity, that really not on purpose, that I kind of picked up for so many years of my life, kind of early on, was this vision of like, all right, I have my insurance, my fire insurance, or I have my, God wants me to be in heaven with him, but until then, I'm just kind of hanging on. There's a bunch of things I shouldn't do. If I'm really good, I'll read my Bible or pray about it. And if I'm feeling really, really good that day, I'll tell someone about it and go on a missions trip. But there's there isn't this great vision of what it looked like day to day. And so I think a lot of people that I've interacted with over time, as life kind of hits them, that grip of holding on for dear life begins to loosen, and they're like, "Well, is this really it?" Yeah. And I think that's kind of where I found my passion for helping people follow Jesus, is helping them see. People, a lot of people that I interact with are, more from that Christian background, and kind of helping them see hey, there is more than just hoping to be gripping onto Christianity barely by the time you make it to heaven.
When was a moment that you can think of where you kind of were jolted to the reality that what you had known in regards to the Christian faith and how to navigate it, there was more, and you're just kind of like, whoa.
Yeah.
Was there a moment?
Yeah, so for me, it really came from, and I think what's unique is every person either has something happen to them or they do something.
Yeah.
And in my case, I did something. And so, I made some poor financial decisions and kind of hid them, and was kind of living, and really I had this outward life, and then I had this kind of secret, inner life that just wasn't really making known anyone. So my inner life was just a mess compared to what I was projecting. And I've kind of always been in Christian leadership position, so I was in a Christian leadership position at that moment. And it really just made me think so this happens, and it gets, my wife discovers it, and we kind of figure, we work through it all and all that stuff. But it left me wondering, how did I get here?
Yeah.
I am the one that's supposed to be walking people through things like this, and now here I am. And it really made me begin to it was that one question, I kind of pulled the thread, and a lot came apart. I say that not I didn't question faith, but I just began to wonder what got me here. And it just kind of helped me see and begin to kind of pinpoint the areas of my life that I had right thoughts on things, but I didn't have habits or actions, or my life wasn't matching one where it was actually actively following Jesus, but rather it was that, well, hold on, kind of do what I want as long as it's not super bad. But then
there's a line, there's a list of things you shouldn't do.
Right, but I was falling into things that I shouldn't have. My flesh was coming out in ways I wasn't expecting it to. And so it really became a season, a journey for me of recognizing is there more? And, even fast forward a little bit, even kind of reading some of the teachings of Jesus, where it's hey, greater things, you will do greater things than I, or, seek first the kingdom and all will be handed to you, basically promising all, there's abundant life for you.
Yeah.
And I'm
but you weren't experiencing that.
Yeah, it's I can't say I've done greater things. I can say I've prayed for someone before.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say greater was on my, tagline for how I've been living my life. And so I just was there has to be more. Jesus is saying there's more. My life isn't matching.
Yeah.
And so it kind of just led me to this place of like, all right, what does it look like to have more? What is there actually out there? And fortunately, God met me and kind of led me down a path and a journey. And it's kind of where it kind of began.
That's so good. That's so good. Sophia, how from your perspective, how have you found yourself in the midst of survival and realizing that you've kind of lived in the rhythm of just holding on for dear life?
I think my experience is very recent and very much connected to becoming a mom.
People are going to get like, man.
Yeah.
Oh, come on.
Yes. And I hope, I want to say that this is my experience, and anything that I say is applied to what the Lord has taught me. And this is not a prescriptive, you need to do this. It's just what I've learned. But we found out that we were pregnant in February of 2020, right? No, March of 2020. So like 2 days later, the world like completely shut down.
That's
and
crazy.
We were like, what is going on? And at first it was kind of fake. Like, at least you thought it was kind of fake. Like, this isn't real. And then it just progressively got worse. And so I went through my pregnancy in the middle of the pandemic, like at the height of it, and then gave birth in a really scary, crazy situation. And I remember like, it was like day 2, my son was in the NICU, and Marcus, my husband, and I are in the, hospital room, just like kind of recovering. And one of the doctors comes in and she says to me, the next few months, maybe this whole year, is really just going to be survival mode for you guys.
Wow. She said that phrase.
Yeah. She said survive. You're going to be in survival mode. And I remember she left, I'm obviously my hormones, so I'm like a mess and crying. And I just was thinking to myself, excuse me, I can sometimes have a little bit of an attitude problem. And I'm just confessing that now.
Oh, that's great.
And I remember thinking, like, my husband and I are like, what do you mean we're just gonna be in survival mode? That sounds awful. Like, in my mind, I know she meant well, but it was just like, why would you say that to someone? Like, I don't want to just survive, but I kind of like received what she said as truth. Like, oh, okay, I guess that's what we're going to be doing. So finally, when we get to go home with our son, it felt like pure survival mode. Now I know, like, practically, if you're not getting sleep, the newborn
There's a
stage.
practical aspect to what she was saying.
Yes, of course. The newborn stage can be difficult and you can feel like you are surviving, but that began to like really stretch out for us. And it felt like every day I was waking up and I was like, okay, if I can just make it to like bedtime, then I'll be okay. And then like as the months continued, like Marcus and I weren't really communicating. We were fighting more. We were like really snappy. Like there was no joy in our home. There was no peace in our home. Like we felt like walking zombies. And this is even after like Isaiah was finally sleeping through the night and, making progress. We just felt like empty shells.
Yeah. Well, survival had become normal at that point.
Oh yeah,
almost.
it had become normal.
Yeah.
We didn't know how to like switch back into life. And so we came to this extreme breaking point, and this was like right after Revival Week of last year for our church. And like we sat down across the table from each other, and I was like, Marcus, I don't really like you. And he was like, yeah, I don't really like you either. And then all of this stuff just started coming out. I'm like, I don't like being a mom, and I don't like being a dad, and this sucks, and what is this? And we realized, oh my gosh, how did we get to a point where like it's this low and this toxic? And that is when we realized, okay, something has to change. Like for me personally, I knew that being a mom for me did not mean that I was supposed to stay at home all day and be drowned by this burden of motherhood, like fighting and sleep deprivation and cooking and cleaning and just drowning by all of these things, but not having purpose and intentionality and rest and all of these things. And for Marcus, it was the same thing. And so that like began our journey of, all right, we need to establish routines and we need to establish rhythms, and we need to stop looking to like for us specifically, what church culture may be teaching us what it means to be a mom, what it means to be a dad. And we need to ask God, what does this look like for our family? How do we establish boundaries? How can I take care of myself? How does Marcus take care of himself? This whole journey of fleshing that out. And once we did that, I mean, we're still in the process of doing that and figuring that out, but so much like in this past season, joy and life has been brought to us as parents and as a couple. We are not, it's not that we don't have hard days, but I personally do not feel like I am just trying to survive as a mom. I'm like, absolutely not. Like, my child is not going to like make me feel like a shell, because then I will only reciprocate that to them.
Yeah, you won't have much to offer.
I won't have anything to offer. So we've had to navigate, how do we fill our cups up so that we can be present here? And what is our mission and purpose, not just in the home, but like in life. So that's a very long string, but that's kind of
and
a
so
bit of
many
a story.
people are going to relate to that, right? And I think that's the beautiful thing about the idea of survival mentality or mode. It looks like a lot of different things.
Yeah.
It looks like a lot of different things. You know, for me, on the surface, on the outside, no one would know that I was in survival mode, because I was pretty successful. And you know, it's interesting with my personality, and I think my wiring and even gifting, like I just had success. I felt like, you know, success in family and success in job and a career. Like I could lead people and build things and start things, and there was a measure of success. There was a measure of outward, thriving that for people to look on would say, like, that is an example of thriving. However, there are two moments in my life. One, I think you actually were there for. Where there are two moments where, in God's grace, He woke me up to this idea that, wow, I actually, although it may look different, but I am in survival mode. Like, in fact, if I continue down this path, it's not going to end well for me. It's not going to end well. The first moment was a good friend of mine. He's a pastor up in Pennsylvania. And he said to me, he asked me the question, because we were talking about church growth at that point, like church growth and numbers. And he goes, how much is enough for you? And honestly, I looked at him and be like, what are you talking about? This is the church. It's never enough. Always more people. Always. And I mean, and I put like the best Christian Jesus spin on that. You know, it's like more in heaven. Like it's like, and he was such a wise man, because what he was trying to help me see is what had consumed like the inward, like, of just this kind of rat race of more, success, like build it. And that there was never any end to that. Yeah. I would never reach it. Yeah. It would be this unattainable, unreachable, and it was going to drown me eventually. Yeah. Like it was just, and I didn't see it in the moment. Like I didn't. I probably gave, because, you know, I can be good with words. I probably gave a good response. It probably sounded real holy and Jesus-like, but man, he was on to something. And I remember the second moment was, Sofia and I, we've been community group for years, and I remember where we were. We were in the O'Donnell's home, Ryan and Emily O'Donnell, and I remember we were just talking. We were having group together, doing life together, and Emily, and I believe almost a prophetic type moment, looked at me and said, I believe she was hearing from the Spirit of God. She said, I think God is going to redefine success for you. That's what she said to me. Yeah. And I do remember my response to that was a little bit more mature than my response to the first, where I kind of just received it. Yeah. And didn't understand the fullness of what she would said in that moment and what she was speaking on, I think on behalf of God, that God wanted to redefine success, or honestly redefine what it meant to thrive.
Yeah.
In my case, as a husband, as a father,
Yeah.
and specifically as a leader in the church, a leader in the community, where yes, I mean, there's still this element of like I'm building and I'm growing, but it comes from a different place, and there's a different goal and aim. And you use the word formation. There's something that God's been doing in me
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
has
for sure.
produced something just completely different. And it's like once you taste that and you see that, like once you taste and see that the Lord is good, it's like I don't want to go like one, I don't want to go back to that. But
Right.
two, I want to make sure other people can experience the same thriving and the same fruit. When we are no longer captives, we want to tell people that captivity is there's more than captivity.
Yeah.
We want to help rescue
Yeah, it's contagious.
people. So
Yeah.
that's why we're here.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So we're going to talk about a lot of different topics
Yeah.
because this concept permeates every aspect of our walk in life.
Yeah.
And so there's really not going to be much that's off limits other than the fact that it's always going to go back to how do we as followers of Jesus walk in the way of Jesus in every area of life and thrive in that and be really honest and really open about it. And so that's why we're here.
Yeah.
So let's start. Tanner, can you help us give some definition to what does it mean to thrive as a follower of Jesus? What the heck do we actually mean by that?
It's a good question. Yeah, because I think that, again, what definitions, context, what we picture when we hear certain words, informs
matters.
then what we go after.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think so many of us have adopted a version of thriving that has more to do with what like per se culture has called us to be or asked us to be, with just kind of like a Jesus bumper sticker over it, And so I think for so many people who are in the church, their struggle is that they believe the right things, but they've adopted cultural assumptions on what it means to be, to thrive, to be successful, to experience the good life. And those two can't exist. It's like even if you believe the right thing, but if you're living some way that's not that way, that's going to cause tension.
Yeah.
It's going to be difficult. And so I think that idea of thriving doesn't mean difficulty. Doesn't mean that you're not experiencing difficulty. Doesn't mean you can't experience hardship. But I was even reading this morning, a book that I'm reading. It's this idea of not being anxious about circumstances, but actually being able to place the entire weight of who you are, despite circumstances, on God. So whatever you're facing, whatever you're experiencing, you're going through life with this not reactive mentality. Not so the idea of surviving is you're just hoping to make it till you're rescued. Like you're not. There's nothing purposeful other than just stay alive.
And it's very reactive, right?
Right.
It's like this thing happens. Okay,
Exactly.
I just got to boom, get through this.
It is reactive. It is like it is not. It's not intentional. It is just you're just hoping to make it. And so thriving is actually you're moving forward, but moving forward, not being anxious about what's going around you, not letting things around you. I say anxious, like not being pulled and swayed or destroyed by things going around you, but actually placing the full weight of who you are on God, but then doing so to actually like bless others. So it's like this combination of yourself is placed on God, like your hope, your being, your who you are is placed on God, and then also living a life that is for other people out of doing that.
Yeah. So what thriving is not then, so part of the definition of thriving is what it's not.
Right.
It's not free from suffering.
No. It's not perfection.
Like
Yeah.
Jesus never promised us a life of no suffering. It's
Right.
not free from pain and difficulty. But it is probably speaks to more of how we actually approach those moments and
Right.
move through those moments. Even success, how we approach success and moments of abundance and good things, right?
Right.
So then let's just talk about what is evidence that we would see, because part of me is like this idea of thriving could be abstract. So what are some tangible evidence, either one of you can answer, of just someone who is walking in kind of the way of Jesus, who's thriving in their faith? What would you see?
Yeah. You first.
I think what first comes to mind is not running on exhaustion, not running on empty. I think it can seem in our culture and even within the church to say, like, if you were to say, well, you're not supposed to be tired all the time, like people might push back and be like, well, I have a job and I have kids and I have responsibilities. Like that's just normal. But I believe and have experienced personally that is not the best way. It doesn't mean you're not going to have sleepless nights or that you're not going to have weeks where maybe you are like, I'm just tired. But I do think it is actually possible to not be running on empty all the time. And I think that is some fruit and evidence of I'm not just surviving, I'm thriving, is to be able to say, actually, I'm not like exhausted at the end of every day or when the weekend comes, like I'm just laying on the couch and vegging out because I have nothing left.
Yep.
That I think is not fruit of thriving, and there is an opposite way to lead in that.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, I think from as I think about this, there's like a few things, and I think the first thing, I'm trying to like put all my thoughts and words into order, and I think really the first one is intentional. Like there's intention behind what you're doing, and it doesn't mean you have everything together. It doesn't mean your life is perfect. I think even that can be something we need to like maybe people aren't moving towards this perfection.
No,
and it's not the
It's
goal,
not the goal.
but there's intention behind what you're doing.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then I think, after that, like this idea of like Matthew 7, where Jesus ends the Sermon on the Mount with this picture of a house, two houses, one built on sand, one built on a rock, and both houses are hit with storms. So even the person who is living the life that Jesus is calling him to live, the person on the rock, is also hit with a storm, but is able to stand firm. So I think someone who's actually able to doesn't mean you don't doubt, doesn't mean you don't struggle, doesn't mean you don't cry, grieve, experience pain. I actually would say my current life situation has a lot of those things in it. But it's someone who like presses through with rejoicing, seeing a greater purpose behind just what's happening in the moment.
Yeah.
And then finally, I think if it's not perfection, well, that means that we actually need to deal with what's not perfect with us. I think someone who is thriving in the kingdom of God is aware of the ways that keep them from thriving in the kingdom of God.
Come on.
And, so repentant confession. I think someone who's very aware of, who even has people in their life who can call out, the dark side of ourselves.
Yeah.
And so I think someone who is, intentional, who can stand firm, but also is dealing with the stuff in their life, taking ownership of what they can cause is, some elements of thriving, some fruit, as like a word that Jesus would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So would it be safe to say, like, even if you look at the teachings of Jesus, that someone who is thriving, it has more to do with the internal than external, right? Like, I think probably what we may see as evidence or fruit from the outside actually is coming from where they are internally.
Yeah.
That in their soul, their mind, their heart, that there's something that is formed in them that causes them to live differently, causes them to interact differently, causes them to move through seasons of suffering and sadness differently.
Yeah.
Which again is what we'll all talk about, those different aspects. But it really does come down to internal first. Like that's what Jesus really cared about.
Yeah. I think it can't be, I think the image I get is like a sinkhole. And, if our outward life is outpacing our internal life, it's like a sinkhole is like there's water running underneath the ground, and eventually it caves in. And sinkhole isn't, you don't know the sinkhole's like there until it actually caves in.
Yeah.
And I think, it's kind of the first steps towards thriving is actually developing that deep internal life that is aware of the things of God, that's aware of themselves, that's healthy and like in those kind of in those ideas, like consistent. And not having, like two people can do the same thing, but for completely different motivations. So you can be you can be in the exact same position you are in now, literally doing everything you're doing right now, but be in sin based off of, I'm going to prove to everyone I'm the best church leader that could ever be there, But but that has a cap and that has a course it's going to run, and you're eventually not going to end where you want to.
Yeah. And eventually, there will be an article written about me if that's the case, right?
Right.
I think that seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, not that that's my only aim is to prevent from being written about or having a podcast talk about me, but saying like, I'm not too far removed from that.
Yeah.
If I'm not willing to do that deep internal work.
And to quickly connect that to survival. So like that motivation then creates like a survival mentality, right?
It is,
So it's like, if your motivation is comfort, if your motivation is, righting all the wrongs in the world, even to help other people, but it's out of a like self-motivated idea, like everything then comes in, anything that comes in contact with that prevents that is now an enemy, and now you have to survive, you have to hang on, you have to do what you can to like preserve that inner motivation. But if it's your motivation is love and peace, the fruits of the Spirit, like to be connected with God and then to like bless others, you're actually able to like walk through those things, not in how is this going to attack my motivation, or how do I survive this season, or just this thing, or how do I get myself to bed and then up the next day, as you were talking about, Sophia. But you can actually move into your life with intention. You might do the similar things, it's just with a different mentality of like being present, being intentional, being like engaged in them, not just trying to get through them.
Yeah. All right, so I think let's close with this. Just personally, all of us are unique personalities and perspectives. What do you hope for that person listening? And you can speak about a specific person that you see in your mind, like that you're really passionate towards or about, maybe a demographic, maybe a life stage, I don't know. But what are you, as they're listening to this and they're deciding, should I continue to listen to, like, is this something that's going to add value? Whatever. It's like, we got 1 million podcasts. Yeah. What is your hope for them that they would walk away with? Yeah. So, either one can start.
Yeah. I think for me specifically, like the demographic that I maybe am drawn to, moms, because that's the season that I'm in. And then also teenagers and young women who are struggling a lot with their mental health, because that's another like thing I'm very passionate about. I would say that the thing that they need to hear, because I need to hear this, is that you do not have to go through life being like broke as a joke spiritually. Like, that is not what God has for you. If you're a mom, like, your purpose is not to wake up in the morning, keep your child alive, and then go to bed like so exhausted you're not able to shower, or like to feel like you have no purpose or no passions or
no
gifting
identity.
Or no identity outside of this human that God has given you. It's a beautiful gift. Yeah. They're wonderful, but they are not your identity, nor are you a slave to them. Like, it is a partnership. And I want moms to know that they can have health and wholeness, and they can have careers, and they can have passions, and they can have giftings that make them better, and then in return make them even better moms and wives and daughters and friends. And so if you're a mom, I want you to know that. And if you are a teenager or a young adult female, who struggles with anxiety, depression, mental health things, and it just feels like it's never going away, I believe that there's so much more. And I do believe that Jesus has created a way for us to thrive even in our mental illness battles. And that there is a way to I just need to like make it through today. Like, as someone going through loss and suffering and pain, who also struggles with anxiety and depression, I can truly say that I don't have to go through this season like surviving and just trying to make it, but that Jesus has opened up ways for me to thrive in the midst of crazy pain. So
come on.
That's good.
That is so
really good. Wow.
Yeah.
All right. I guess I'll follow that.
I'm sorry.
Go for it.
You got it.
Yeah, no, I think for, I was honestly battling like how I should share this, but I'll just be honest. Like, I think this church was really impactful in kind of the breaking point moment of where I was. In fact, it was actually a sermon from Tammy on confession the day after I was found out of my hidden sins, and that it was like boom, Pastor John met with me, and so this church, Waymaker Church, was really important in the breaking point moment. But I would say there wasn't a lot of tools in person afforded to me of how to begin engaging with spiritual disciplines, finding a greater depth, So there was that moment. And I think I had to go elsewhere. I found some resources, found some people. You probably hear me quote them a lot. Just read a couple of their books and you'd be like, oh, you'll find me out. That's where I got this from. And so I found it and was blessed from it and it was amazing. But but there's something about being in person, there's something about being in context with the person or in the area. And so my heart is for the people who are well, is there more? Is there something else? And a lot of people I know in this kind of that 20s to even 35 demographic, just post-college to kind of beginning to, middle adulthood, there's a lot of questioning. No one's life goes according to plan.
Yeah.
And a lot of times the vision of Christianity they were given cannot reconcile their life not going to plan. Again, whether they did something or whether something happened to them. And so my hope is just to kind of help those people see hey, there is more. What are things that you can begin to do to actually experience that more? And then really for us to be able to meet people where they might be at and help them walk through their journey, again, to make it the long haul.
Yep.
And, I live right now and I'm very in the now and probably more aware of the now than I had been before, but still living with that no, I need to be thinking what am I going to be in 10 years and in 15, 20, if God affords me those, I want those to be years where I hope my 40s are better than my 30s.
That's right.
And I hope even beyond that. And so I want to help people begin to actually live that now.
Yep. That's so good. Yeah. So it's not, I go back to even the beginning, this isn't something that we've had to necessarily force or manipulate. It's just, I think it is what God is doing. And we want to help build sort of a catalog, a library of resources and content.
That's a good way of putting it.
That people can go to and say, here's where I'm at. And here's for me, you guys know me. Some have said that I'm bougie. At least I have the desire. I don't necessarily live.
I would say I think you have. I think that's a good way of putting it. You have a deep desire, not deep, but
desire.
A desire.
Yeah, I find myself most comfortable sitting at a table with powerful, wealthy individuals that at the clubhouse, at the golf course, driving nice cars, honestly, that's just where I'm that's what I belong. Yeah, I belong here. I don't know why I'm that tape. Way. I know. Yeah. Okay. I'm admitting this is confession. This is being vulnerable. And there's so much ingrained in me that I have those desires for more and for bigger and for nice things. I love stuff and I like being successful, and I believe God's wired me even that way. And so, for me, I think about the man specifically who has been so caught up in the race, and even the man who loves Jesus, is going to heaven one day.
Yeah, he's doing good things.
Doing good things.
Yeah,
building businesses and making money and is able to provide a nice home for his kids and his family and for the most part is still married maybe. I think about this man specifically and just say there is so much more. There really is. And those things are not inherently evil and bad, but man, they have created a culture of survival that is ruining and eating away at their souls, their minds and their hearts. And I go back to this idea is interesting when you were telling the story about you and Marcus and you had that moment sitting at the table, being honest with each other. I think about the husband and wife who has that conversation after their kids move away and go to school, and they look at each other and they say, who are you?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what did we do? How did we end up here?
Yeah.
I don't know you. I don't like you. And it's like at that point they're like, well, I guess it's too late. I guess call it quits. Or maybe we'll keep going, but we're going to be roommates at best. I'm going to continue to build my career and my success. I'm going to collect and gather what will gain me a certain status. And I just believe Jesus has so much more.
Yeah.
Speaking from someone who desires that so deeply.
Yeah.
And who tries to continue to submit that,
that's good.
at the feet of Jesus. So I think there's a lot. All of the different things you guys talked about, even we're gonna touch on them, like subject matters and topics, and so
Even more.
So much more. And so we hope that it's a blessing for people that really do care about following Jesus.
Absolutely.